And it was one thing, particularly with the amount of information that is needed in this story, that we need an audience to understand and follow the storyline, that so much has happened, that it needed to be crystal clear. But we all talked about making a very tight, punchy, lean story that didn't let up, that it was a slow acceleration. Just before you know it, it runs away with you.
Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations on the film and welcome. There's so much going on in it. Daisy, obviously you are a producer of the film and one of the co-stars of it, but it was also from an original idea of yours, from what I understand, right? Talk to us about the origins of the story and how it came around to you.
Firstly, thanks so much for coming out, everyone. We really appreciate it. Yay! The origin of the story was a little different to what ended up being the film. I was on a film called The Marsh King's Daughter, and I had a little girl in it who was called Joey, who was only 6 when we were filming. And I was struck by the incredible intimacy that's formed on a set between people, between actors. And because I was away from home and it was during COVID, I was really isolated when I went home. But I have an incredibly stable home life. And I was thinking about if you didn't have that and were away from home and those intimacies and those bonds were formed, what that might feel like if you are destabilized in any way. So the original idea was actually an actress infiltrating a family. And so I landed and told Tom, and he started working on it. But a little way into writing, he said he was just much more drawn to the woman at home, who is the person that doesn't get to be on set, that doesn't get to go and experience the excitement and the romanticism of what we get to do. And that's where we went.
Yeah. And Annette, let's obviously just talk about Annette as a journey for yourself, and what were some of the keys to her for you, because there's a lot going on there, including even the fact that the baby crying, there's sort of no psychic space for her in a lot of ways. She's a fascinating character. What were some of the keys to her for you that helped you figure her out?
Well, it's interesting really building a character from the ground up. Certainly we knew we were meeting this couple not in a good spot. Because, we could have done the thing of seeing what they had, but we wanted to greet them where they are. And you understand why they got together and why they would have got together, but they are not in a good spot in the relationship. And something I really wanted to make sure of, and particularly not having children myself, I wanted to make sure that it never came across that Annette was struggling because of the children. She's struggling because she's isolated, and she's struggling because she's been squished, and she's made too many compromises in the relationship, and she just does not have a support system. So with a second baby who's crying a lot and she's not getting enough sleep, the push of that and how difficult that is, and really throughout it, it's interesting. Someone asked me about release, and I don't think there's ever a real moment of release for her, because even the moment in the stairs, she still has to go back. She still has to go and get the kids, and she still has to take them to the park. So even that isn't the fully realised exhalation. We talked about breath a lot in the film. It's not even the fully realised moment. And actually the biggest moment of release I found was the steady breath at the end before I put the phone down. But she is battered and she is bruised, but certainly there is no way, because those kids are her motivation, she will not break. And I think as a person, she can take so much, but the minute the kids are involved in any way, that is when she has had enough.
Yeah. And in fact, when she's talking about her past career in publishing and kind of what she's doing now, you see the kind of push and pull going on in her between what her life used to be and what it is now. Tom, what a fantastic screenplay. So tight and so gripping and mesmerizing. Reminds me of some great Hitchcock films like Suspicion or Rebecca or Shadow of a Doubt. It has sort of that sense of you kind of think it's going one way and then it's going another way, and you're trying to figure it out as you're getting to know these characters. I'm wondering from a writer's point of view, as you were kind of sussing it all out, were there ever any moments where you kind of had to say, oh, wait a minute, let me backtrack a little bit. This wasn't set up or that wasn't set up, because it's such a fulfilling screenplay, but I would imagine some of that is a huge chore in a lot of ways, right?
Yes. We decided the idea for this twist at the end, as it were, that came quite late on. And really what I realized was this was a story really about mistaken perceptions of who people are, that an audience hopefully will misjudge Annette. They will think she's one thing when she's actually another. They will underestimate her and overlook her. They will see this guy as someone different. They will, every character in it. And I kind of decided I wanted to push that further and make an audience almost overlook and underestimate the narrative itself, and take people on a journey thinking they're watching one thing where actually they're watching another. So that did mean once I made that decision, I was already quite far in narratively, and I did have to go back, yes, and start to go, right, there are certain things I don't want to show that Annette's been doing. And go back and sort of, and as you say, sort of like enrich in what's gone on. And I didn't want, as Daisy said, I didn't want it to be a very immediate response. I wanted an audience to feel that Annette has been dealing with this and coping with this situation and this man for quite a while. And it's not just some knee-jerk reaction that she's a bit tired and a bit pissed off. It's that she has been dealing with something, she has been repressed and pushed again and again, and these final straws we see. There's a brilliant book by Ed Zwick, Hits, Flops and Other Illusions, and he talks about picking up the story as late as possible. And I really like that idea of finding these people not even midway, like kind of towards the end, and you're just sort of seeing these final straws. But that did mean structurally, yes, I had to carry on the narrative and then go, oh wait, I'm going to need to go back and plant that. I'm going to need to plant that baby crying from the beginning, so that when we have her running away from the house, this isn't the first time this has happened. This is the very last time it can happen.
Right. I just want to pick up on one thing you said, Tom, which is about perceptions and how it's bookended with intent, right? Like there is this sort of sense, and all of us as audience members are picking up these kind of perceptions, but there's the character's intent is the other side of that coin, right?
Very much so, and you know, I'm an actor predominantly, so coming to all of the things I write, they're character based, and it's what excites me about a character, that as an actor I do loads and loads of work, as you all know, like you do a lot of work. You only reveal a little bit to the audience, but you yourself have a private backstory and a life that's living, and I was interested in that for these characters and extending that further to an audience, that there is so much more to this woman, to this man, to even their daughter. There is so much more to them that we don't see. And so her intent at the beginning, really, to your first question, going back, she has been planning this the whole time, that there was a moment where she, as soon as she heard and could smell that his attraction was going somewhere else, that his affection was being pulled somewhere else, she could smell it, and she thought, not again. And that planning took place from the beginning, and what you see at the end is the conclusion of a long-running plan.
Yeah. Shazad, also a phenomenal performance like Daisy, and the two of you kind of have this great pas de deux that kind of goes on in so many ways. But I want to ask you about the dichotomy, and Tom mentioned this a little bit just now. Obviously, Annette's got sort of this need to sort of, you know, reinvent herself or kind of recapture something about her, and Ben has that too, albeit darkly. There is sort of this other thing going on, and it's important to kind of see his journey in some ways too. What were some of the keys to him for you? Because there is a parallel to that in some ways for his character,
you
right?
Obviously want to enjoy watching him get his comeuppance in the end, and he's almost a villain, but obviously I have to humanize him, and you could argue that he sees this thing and he thinks his life's going to be better, and he's aiming to try, and he thinks, okay, right now that's what I'm going to do, and that's going to make everything better. And there's some justification to what he does in certain places. So it's like, and he believes that. So, and I have to believe that. So, yeah, I mean, that's just good writing. You want to see both sides of the argument.
Yeah. He's got a dark moral barometer, but you still have to, like all characters, you kind of have to still understand where he's coming from or where he's going. And then I had read it, and I love this description. I think you had described him as sort of an egotistical zombie cruising only towards what he wants. I hope I got that correct, which I just think is a great line.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
When did I say that?
But my question for that is that there's a whole other aspect to that is going on behind his eyes, and it's sort of about kind of depicting the life of the mind. And, you know, in front of a room full of actors, there's sort of that level too. You've got to kind of be able to kind of show what's going on there without necessarily telling in some ways. And some of it's in the script, but some of it is in the interpretation of it, right?
Yeah, I suppose we try and all do our parts. You hope that Sam and the DOP are going to capture your thoughts, and you're trying to think those thoughts, and then the music comes out. I mean, yeah, it's all just the beauty of the collaborative process, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to obviously the rest of the cast surrounding these amazing actors, including, of course, Pippa Bennett-Warner, Hiba Ahmed, and, of course, Matilda Lutz. Let's have a round of applause for them, because they're all phenomenal. And director Sam Yates, because this is obviously his first film, too. Let's give a round of applause to him, because it's a phenomenal job. Tom, you mentioned just, obviously your career as an actor as well. I'm wondering, in other ways, were there other aspects of writing the screenplay that your acting informed it? Were there kind of moments that you kind of felt like, your experience as an actor kind of helped this scene or that scene kind of get informed in certain ways?
Yeah. I remember there being quite an early draft that we'd all settled on that everyone was quite happy with, and I decided to do a pass from each character's point of view, which I really, really enjoyed as a process. It doesn't matter if they had one line or 50. I wanted to do a whole pass of the movie and just think, if I'm the actor playing this person, are there any plot holes? Are there any moment that doesn't feel true to this character and what they're supposed to be doing? And I know every actor in the world has had to do exposition. And it was one thing, particularly with the amount of information that is needed in this story, that we need an audience to understand and follow the storyline, that so much has happened. That it needed to be crystal clear, but we all talked about making a very tight, punchy, lean story that didn't let up, that it was a slow acceleration just before you know it runs away with you. So because of that, I didn't want there to be a let up of a scene where a character sits there and goes, oh, but then that summer you went. I didn't want that, because I know for myself as an actor, I find that very hard to retain the truth of my character when being asked to do something that I know what it is. So I tried to find the most simple and elegant way of delivering that information to an audience without it compromising what I felt the characters would be going through, and finding fun ways. Like one of my favorite scenes to write, I remember thinking halfway, we need this turn point. And it's the character of Esther that Pippa plays so brilliantly. She only has one scene in that park, and so much information needed to be given, because at this point I wanted the audience to know this is not the first time that Annette has been judged, not just by Ben and Nova, but by everyone in their social circles, and that she as a woman has been pushed aside and overlooked. But I wanted to do it in an almost comedic way, and in a way that sort of made an audience kind of lean forward and go, oh, hang on, here we go, without it just being exposition. Yes.
Yeah. And Daisy, one of the things that in your terrific performance that I have caught a couple of times now, having seen the film twice, is that there's this sort of level of implosion or kind of expected explosion, and that it ends up going a different way. And I'm sort of thinking about the scene washing the dishes. They're sort of there. The scene with Pippa is another one where there's sort of like there's a level to your performance where you see it ratcheting up, and then you see it kind of boiling down again as she puts it back kind of deep into herself, into her soul, and kind of reassesses things in some ways. As you were kind of going through beat by beat on the script and talking with Tom about it, and just kind of figuring out the character for yourself, were there moments when you sort of thought, this seems like it's going to be like it should be a little bit more, but it will be more powerful if it's felt, if it's seen, if it's intense?
I think something interestingly that Sam brought up that we actually hadn't realised was in the script when he pitched was that you never see Annette ingesting anything. She never takes a drink, she never eats anything. And Ben is often eating and often drinking. And sort of the approach of someone who is caring so much about other people and sort of forgetting to care for herself. And she's not nourishing herself, and she isn't being nourished by her partner. And a lot of that, I think, was to do with the breath. And, everyone has a coping mechanism when things feel out of control, and what you can do when you're in a confined space or with kids and you don't want to scare them. And so the breath hold became that of, let me just try and take a second to collect myself, and let me try not to fly off the handle and get through it, get through the moment. And a lot of that was about holding on so tight, even honestly in the relationship and in the family, holding on to something that ultimately is easier to let go. It's not working, it's easier to let go, but trying so hard to hold on. But she never really does release in that way. But it's funny, earlier on I was thinking the best night's sleep Annette has probably had in 3 years is that night. Right. Like, she's probably having a great time, yeah. But certainly there was a lot of being held. And even in the latter part of the film, which was honestly so delicious to play, the savouring of knowing and planning, it's still held, and there isn't she's not displaying any of this, and it's not a showy, it's not performative to anyone. She knows what's going on, and things are getting calmer as she's finding that strength again. But even still, it's all for her.
Right, yeah, exactly. There's no sort of haha gotcha kind of thing, exactly. And I just want to, it just makes me think of the only moment of release that's closest to it is the run, which is obviously, I love moments in films where you see a bit of action or a bit of physicality that defines so much for a character, and that obviously is one of them, right? And it's a tremendous moment.
And I think the way Sam and Laura, our amazing DP, filmed it was so beautiful, because Sam really wanted it to be the camera is desperately trying to keep up with her, and she's desperately trying to get out. Like, the camera cannot keep up with her. And of course, she knows her child is in no danger. But that feeling that she just needs a moment, and everything, she can sort of do that until she can't hear the baby anymore. And it's just the pull of that house. And again, the way Amanda, our amazing production designer, the house is nice, but it's a cage. And she is trapped, and she is looked at all the time with all that glass. She's always being viewed. And that feeling of she just cannot quite get away. She can't even get away from her own thoughts. She can't get away from the screaming baby. There's so much she can't get away from. And she's just pulled back again and again to that place.
Shazad and Daisy, actually, a question for both of you. In terms of kind of finding the groove in terms of where they are in their marriage and their relationship, obviously a lot of it is there in the script, but there's a lot of it there that's sort of unsaid, and they're in gestures or things like that. That was obviously so crucial to the film to kind of have that as the starting point. But as Tom said, kind of starting it later than you think, so you're already immersed in it. Were there aspects of figuring out their backstory, though, that were really incredibly helpful? And it could be anything, Shazad.
Yeah, we did a couple of, how long were we did a bit of rehearsal before, just, mining the script, and separately with Sam, we did stuff, and then together in the room. And you're just trying to figure out bits and pieces. And then, or you let that stuff organically happen when we get in the space and start rehearsing scenes. And that's the beauty of it. You sort of, do all the thinking, and then you get there and try and find moments. And that's sort of the magic, I guess.
And we were sort of, our first scene was actually me getting changed. And I remember thinking, because there was so much to establish in that time. But so much of, Tom and Shaz have been friends for a long time. So we were also super lucky to get Shaz for this. But so we had that, but also it was suddenly like, oh my God, a new discovery for the both of us. And being sort of thrust into that. And I do really remember, because of course then as things were being filmed, we were then being informed as to what that relationship was looking like in the moment. And I remember doing this scene on the sofa, talking about the day, and Sam saying, she's like a duck, like there's so much paddling going on, but she's trying to stay calm, and she really is trying to connect, but they're just not connected. They're just missing each other, and they're missing each other's points. And she's not really trying to antagonize, but it feels antagonistic. And then the minute she said something and they've said something, and then everything, the moment's gone. And I remember that really informing a lot of the relationship. And because we had that time, we did all of the house stuff first. So we really built that. And each scene was really informed by us speaking with Sam and honestly having the room actually to try different things and see where it could go.
In the spirit of this film, I'm going to keep everybody on tenterhooks and just say that your idea of discovery, I'm going to come back to that because that's a very interesting one, and I want to come back to that in a second. But Shazad also talking about Matilda and wanting to connect, as Daisy sort of said. There's that aspect, obviously, to Matilda's performance where she's over here, but Ben is really trying to connect in sort of this other way. Kind of talk about working with Matilda on that dynamic, because it's an interesting thing, because he's kind of coming at it from the left side of the stage, and she's sort of walking away off the right side of the stage, in terms emotionally, right?
I suppose because we had that 2 weeks in the house, and build up that natural tension, and we felt trapped in there in a sense, because you're just doing it back to back, and then you get to go to these lovely sets, and they're all in, you know, these lovely costumes, and then your job is to just absorb and watch, and I just got to be almost a voyeur. I'm watching for most of that time, so it's I don't know, you just sort of, that's more of a doing than a try and overthinking that moment, I think. I don't know.
But he's got an earnestness to him. Like Ben's sort of,
he's
so hungry to connect, and she's sort of like,
and he's almost real, and in that moment he's
right.
quite nice in those, generally in those scenes. But just at home, he's a bit of an arsehole.
His motives for connecting is a whole other thing, right? Exactly. Shazad, to also ask you about, what was maybe some of the trickiest scenes in terms of, could either be, trying to find the emotional pitch or kind of getting the handle on. What were some of the trickiest scenes for you?
Technology stuff's always weird. I'm not really, the phone stuff's always, because there's a lot of time on that, but Sam did that brilliant job of what we ended up doing with that was great. I think the end dinner scene is always one you're thinking about, and it's coming up, and we're all sort of all together properly for the first time, so you're trying to understand how to pitch that scene and what to do, and that was probably the one that I was worried about the most.
The film is really beautifully edited. I've technically all across the board. The music, obviously, editing, DP is fantastic. Tom, same question to you, but from a writing point of view, what were maybe some of the trickiest scenes for you to kind of get a handle on in some ways, or kind of suss out?
The last scene actually was difficult because I wanted to isolate these characters as much as possible. So a lot of the scenes take place in duologues. And I liked that idea of, and Ben's character was sort of, he's in both, and you're sort of feeling that pull, and then Annette's just on her own for a lot of it. Bringing them all together, which I knew we had to do. I was thinking, there's that moment in Heat when you're waiting for them to meet, and they're in the diner, and you go, this is what we've been waiting for. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the audience to go, come on. So when that doorbell rings, there's only one person it can be. But I think when it came to writing that, a little bit like Shazzy's just said, I felt like I knew what I wanted it to be. I knew how much information, where I needed it to go, but to navigate a satisfying scene for an audience at the same time as remaining true to each character and their truths, projected truths too, because, Annette is showing a different truth and side of herself to Alicia as to her husband. When Hibber leaves, when Tilly leaves the room, it shifts, and I wanted to take them alone. So there were so many pieces to it that I wanted to get right, and it needed to accumulate, and I couldn't. Anything at any point could destroy the tension, and the secret could come out. So I wanted to just boil it, like sort of bringing pasta to the boiling milk perfectly, and you don't want it to flow over and burn, but it just needs to sit there, and you got it in control, and you're like, and then just when people can't take it anymore, bam, he leaves, and then you've just got to wrap it up fast. You know what I mean? Because now the cat's out of the bag, the audience knows, and I didn't ever want the audience to be ahead. So then just going quick cuts, quick dialogue, and we're out. It was difficult, but also really satisfying. It was the longest sequence to write.
Yeah. And the great coda of it, of course, is the expression on Daisy's face and kind of watching Annette kind of go through that journey. And so, Daisy, I teased that moment that you had said about discovery, so I'm going to ask you about this. To wrap up, was there a moment, it could have been, either in prep, it could have been while you were filming, that was a discovery in some ways? That's something you weren't anticipating about the film or the character or something. You knew the script, you knew it all, but what was something that was maybe a sense of discovery?
Interesting. I feel like a lot of it was a sort of discovery in not such a surprising way, but we got such an amazing team. So the minute the crew was coming on and we had the cast and crew, it was like, oh, this is great. And then someone would suggest something, you go, oh, that's great. So discovery in that way. I think discovery-wise, and it's actually really about performance, is the scene that I found the most difficult was the scene with Richard. And I remember thinking, because I've lived with this from the beginning, and I really had a sense of who Annette was and where we would go and what might happen. And we got there and I was just freaked. We were doing it and I was like, oh my God, I can't do it. I actually don't know. I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't know how to get there. And it's so exposing for Annette. It's the first time she is out in the situation with someone that used to know her, and she's trying to show part of herself that used to be there, and maybe it's been a bit buffed away, and the morning couldn't have been worse, and she's got the baby, and it's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. I think I was probably just feeling a bit of that. And I remember talking to Sam about it, and I was panicking because also producing it, I was like, we need to make the day, and I can't be the person that holds us up. But I remember feeling good because I was speaking to Sam about it, thinking, oh my God, I can't do it. What if I can't do it? And he was really calm and really, he's very thoughtful and Sam just doesn't rush. He was really thoughtful about everything. And I thought, okay. And then I took the pressure off myself and then did one take and thought, okay. And I think it was the one we used. That was a discovery in that I thought it would have been so clear. And actually in the moment, there was, a lot mentally to contend with to get there.
Yeah, I just want to underscore that because obviously, it's, as we talked about, it is a room full of actors. That what you felt that adds to the character because we feel her being flummoxed a little bit by, oh wait, I thought this was going to be sort of an easy readjustment into who I used to be, and she's trying to reconnect, and she kind of can't with herself, right?
And so much time's gone. Yeah. She makes reference to the person that used to make the coffee, and she's now, and it's like in the blink of an eye, it feels momentary for her. Yeah. And everyone else has moved on, and she's sort of stuck in a bit of stasis where they are, not with her children, but with the relationship and that thing of, oh no, is it too late? Is this too late for me to come back? Is it too late for me to try and recapture that part of myself again?
Well, the film is memorable and magnetic, as are both of your performances and the screenplay. Thanks to Shout Studios for providing it to us. I just want to ask everybody if you could just stay in your seats for just a couple of seconds. These guys have another event to get to. But ladies and gentlemen, Daisy Ridley, Tom Bateman, and Shazad Latif.
Thank you,
the
everyone.
film
Thank
is
you so
Magpie.
much.
Thank you all so much.